And welcome back to the WHHI Daily News. With us now is Dr. Jerome Singleton. He is the Commissioner of the South Carolina High School League. Dr. Singleton, thank you for joining us again. We're going to talk about eligibility and transfers. And so my first question is very specific. What does at least one transfer from school to school with immediate eligibility mean?
Great question. First of all, thank you for having me. This was a rule that was passed by the membership just a couple of weeks ago. And basically what it is that if I'm attending one school, I can go to a different school than I've attended and be eligible immediately. With some caveats, of course. It depends on when I transferred instead of why I transferred. When you transfer would make the difference. If you transferred before the first practice, then you're eligible immediately to go and play the entire season without any issues. If you transfer after the first practice, there's some restrictions. If you transfer after the first game, there's even more restrictions. But now, instead of it being why you transferred, it's all wrapped around when you transferred.
What are some of the new bylaws and regulations that will affect high school sports in our state?
So as I said, many things were passed and discussed at our spring conference, which was a couple weeks ago. And there were several things that were looked at that we look at differently. One is the role that NIL plays in athletics in high school. We're an amateur sport organization, so you cannot play for pay. And how do we deal with that? We just got to figure out, if you do, then we've got to figure out a system that can address that. But what's unique about NILs in amateur status is that outside entities get involved before the school is aware. Basically, the rule says that if you violate the amateur status, you no longer can play the sport. We've got to find ways to work around that because kids are finding out for the first time. Our rule is first, let's educate and then we can regulate. So the NIL being one that we had to look at. How do we handle games that are canceled? They looked at that. How are we going to address those type of things? Now, there have been some legislative involvement that helped to direct that, but the membership took it on themselves and figured out how we will deal with games that are canceled. If there are good reasons, there's no problem, but if they're not good reasons, then we've got to address that.
Okay, very good. And kind of my last question, is there talk of realignment with the schools or the leagues?
Realignment, you mean as far as reclassification of schools? We do it every 2 years. And ironically, we're going to begin this process again in September for the next 2 years. So we'll do next year based on our current alignment. And then the following year, for 2 years, we'll have a new realignment. But we begin this process in September.
Okay, very good. And I will ask another question for our viewers that might not really understand what the South Carolina High School League's purpose is and mission. What is your role throughout the state in high school athletics, sir?
Well, there's only one organization like this that exists in every state, and to include Washington, D.C. So there's only 51 of these that actually exist. And our main purpose is educational athletics. While many other things can occur, scholarships, championships, people get professional opportunities, that's good. But it's truly educational athletics. It's for everybody. So while there's a selected few, we've got 80,000 that participate each year. Everybody doesn't get a scholarship. Everybody doesn't win a state championship. Everybody doesn't get to the pros. That's such a small number. So we exist for the larger number, the teachable moments that can occur through athletics as serving as a resource for the educational piece. It's to support academics and not compete with academics.
Very good. Well, thank you, Dr. Jerome Singleton, again, the Commissioner of the South Carolina High School League. Appreciate your service to our young people. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
And we'll be right back with more news. Don't go away.